Okay, welcome back. I'm Steve Pope, and this week we're going to be talking about creating and maintaining the Investigator Site File, also known as the regulatory binder. So, it's important to understand that you're going to probably be responsible for maintaining and even creating some of these documents as we go through them. So, make sure you have a pretty good idea of what you're looking at, and we'll go through these. So, according to the regulations on ICHE 6 R2 Section 4.9, the investigator or institution should maintain the trial documents as specified in essential documents for the conduct of a clinical trial. And then these are as required pertaining to local regulations as well, and make sure that you don't accidentally destroy these or lose them or anything like that. So they're very important. So they should be kept in a very secure location, preferably a locked cabinet where only you have access to it, or only the study personnel have access to it, because it's very important that you maintain these throughout the trial. So let's go over our learning objectives for this week. So we're going to review essential documents for regulatory compliance, and I'll be explaining that as we go along. We're going to assess the investigator site file for completeness. We're going to cite the essential documents requirements of ICH GCP, discuss supervisory responsibility of investigators, and discuss the audit preparation process. So, as I mentioned earlier, the investigator's site file is also known as the site regulatory file. So it's generally going to be in a 3-ring notebook, very thick, one of these big 3 or 4 inch 3-ring binders, and it's going to contain all of the essential documents that are listed in ICHE 6 R2 Section 8 and other essential documents that are not necessarily listed there, such as correspondence from the sponsor, from the study team, also emails, investigational product, shipping records, etc. And this may be spread out over several binders. In fact, in many cases, it probably will be. For example, you'll probably have a pharmacy binder, and you'll have a lab binder. You'll probably have a site personnel binder, which I highly recommend, because that way you can put all of your staff member documents, such as medical licenses, CVs, GCP certifications, and things like that that are not specific to the study. Put all those things in one place, and then that way you don't have to duplicate that for another study. You're probably going to be working on more than one study at a time. So if you've got a staff binder that's got all those common items in them, then when your monitors show up to do their monitoring visits, they can look through there because some of that stuff they're going to need to collect, and I'm going to explain more of that as we go along in this particular lecture. The important thing to understand is that this investigator site file belongs to you. It belongs to your site. It's your property. So I highly recommend every site that I go to and work with and monitor at, I explain to them, set these up the same way every time. That way you won't forget things. And it'll make it easier for you. If a monitor comes in and they can't find a specific document, they'll ask for it, and you can explain, where it is, or you can go find it for them. But setting it up the same way is very good, a very good practice. Also, you're probably going to receive one of these from the sponsor. In other words, when you get selected as a site, they're going to send you an investigator site file. You can use that one, or you can set one up yourself. It's going to have the various sections in there that are going to be described in ICHE 6, Section 8. There'll also be some other sections in there that probably are not listed in that text. So, be sure to set it up in a way where you can find things. And I'll kind of explain that as we go along. Another thing that is becoming more and more common, more and more sites are going with an electronic investigator site file. They're using products like Complion or Florence or Realtime. I've used some of these. They're very good. They make it a lot easier for the monitors, but the important thing is that you still have to store, you still have to file documents in that electronic source. And that's one of the frustrating things that I discover in some of my monitoring activities is that I go to a site and documents that I'm expecting to be there are not there because they haven't uploaded them yet. Whereas if they just had a paper binder and all they had to do was use a 3-hole punch and punch some holes in it and stick it in the right section, it's a little easier to do that than it is to scan it if necessary, go through the metadata process of uploading it to the ISF, the EISF that is. And so sometimes I find they fall behind on those tasks. So if you're using one of them, be sure to keep it up to date and don't fall behind on any of those tasks. So, at any rate, we'll move on from here. So in addition to your investigator site file, the sponsor or the contract research organization is going to maintain their own version of that. It's called the trial master file. In years past, years ago, this used to be a filing cabinet where we would store documents, and we'd have sections in there, and you'd put all the CVs in one section and all the protocol signature pages in another section, and that's how it worked. Now we're using much more sophisticated document management products in order to do that. So the sponsor is going to keep the trial master file, and it's going to be organized very much like your ISF. It's going to contain sections that are pursuant to Section 8 in ICHE 6. It's going to be stored electronically, and then at the end of the file, or at the end of the trial, I should say, those documents are going to be shipped out to the sponsor, where the sponsor is going to hold on to those, and they're going to use those when they do their new drug application. So from time to time, what's going to happen is, your sponsor is going to go in there and they're going to discover that there are documents that are out of date, and so they're going to ask you for some. So this is a continual process for you to be involved in maintaining this investigator site file. If the more diligent you are in keeping it up to date, the easier it's going to be for you to find things when it's asked for. Then finally, the sponsor is going to maintain audit trails and statuses of each of these documents in their TMF. The document status is going to be approved, superseded, obsolete, draft. You never throw anything away, even if it's a medical license that has expired. You still keep it in your TMF and you still keep it in your ISF. So nothing is ever thrown away or discarded. So as I mentioned, there is a list of documents in Section 8 of ICHE 6, and they're segmented as follows. They're segmented to documents that are collected before the trial starts, during the trial or while the trial is going on, and then documents that are generally collected after the trial is over. So if you pull that up, it might be a good idea for you to go ahead and pull it up. I've put it on Blackboard so you can pull that up and take a look at it, and you'll see where how those are segmented in that section. So one of your tasks is going to be to continually assess the completeness of your investigator site file. Are there documents that are missing? Are there documents that are supposed to be present? And are they indeed present? Are they available? There are a number of documents that require signatures, such as the FDA Form 1572. That's going to require the PI's signature. That can be a wetting signature, or it can be an electronic signature. There's also going to be a protocol signature page. The PI is going to sign and date that protocol signature page. If there are any protocol amendments, which there more than likely will be, there will be a separate protocol amendment signature page. This indicates that the PI has read and understands the protocol and the protocol amendment. These are also documents that monitors will need to collect when they come out to your site. So please have them ready for them. If you can scan them in beforehand, that's great. If not, some of the better monitors, they bring their own little scanners out there and they do all that stuff right there, because ordinarily there's only a handful of documents at each visit they need to collect. There's also going to be an investigator's brochure acknowledgement of receipt that kind of serves as the same function as the protocol signature page. Just indicates that the PI has received and has read and understood the investigator's brochure, which is a document produced by the sponsor, should be updated every year, and it discusses the product itself, discusses all of the trials that have occurred, if any, so far to date for that product. It also discusses all the safety information related to that product. So that's something that investigators need to review and need to be very aware of. Early in the startup phase of your trial, you're going to get a clinical trial agreement. That's going to come from either the sponsor or it might come from the CRO, depending on who's handling that. But that's going to be basically your agreement, your contract with the sponsor for you to conduct the visit. So probably either the PI or in some cases it may be some other person may sign that, depending on the how your site functions. If it's a large research site, normally there's probably going to be some vice president of research that needs to sign that. It can't just be the principal investigator. There's also going to be a confidential disclosure agreement, a CDA. That's going to be something that is sent out to your site initially by the sponsor just to get the ball rolling. So you've got to have the PI sign a CDA, send it back, then they can start receiving the protocol and they can start receiving some other information about the trial. So that just binds the site so you don't go out and disclose anything that you should not be disclosing. So all these documents here, the FDA Form 1572, which is a contract between the PI and the FDA, not the site, not the sponsor, but the PI and the FDA. And you can read through that document. It's only 3 pages. You can see what the requirements are. We'll get into that a little bit more with the responsibilities of the investigator. But all of these documents that you see listed here must be signed and dated. You can't proceed on the trial until that's done. And these are documents that your IRB is going to have to review as well. So you need to be very familiar with them, and most of these are going to be included in your initial IRB submission when you get started on your trial. So as I said before, there's going to be documents that are collected before the trial begins. Those are listed in section 8.2 of ICHE 6. You can read through those. The ones that we referred to in the previous slide are going to be some of those documents. You're also going to have some others that include things like insurance statements, also financial aspects of the trial, any agreements that have been signed between the PI, the site, and the sponsor. Also, you're going to collect some IRB documents. We'll go over this a little bit in detail during the IRB training, but you're going to need to collect the listing of the committee. Those will be available to you if you're working with a local IRB. They'll provide that. But that's also something that the monitor and the CROs are going to want to collect. So when they ask for that, that's why they want it. Some of these documents may or may not be original signature documents. They might not require a wedding signature. Some of them may. So you can look through section 8.2, and there's a description of each document. There's also a little table there that indicates if that document resides in your investigator site file or in the sponsor's TMF, or both in many cases. There are going to be some documents that the sponsor will not get a copy of, but you can see there in that listing how they apply. So let's talk about documents that are collected during the trial. This is, after you've had your site initiation visit, you've been selected as a site, you've been approved, you have been activated, so you are allowed to start screening and enrolling subjects. So there's going to be some of these that you'll need to be aware of. Some of these documents may or may not require a wet ink signature. Most of them are going to be in that third bullet point. They're going to be documents that change over the course of the trial, such as medical licenses. Medical licenses expire depending on what the laws are in each state. Some licenses are only expire every year, some expire every 2 years. It just depends on what the rules are in your state. Curriculum vitae, CVs, they're like resumes. They're supposed to be signed and dated by the staff member after they've updated it. These are good for 2 years. So if you've got CVs that have not been signed and updated by the staff member within the last 2 years, then they're out of compliance. So you need to get them to sign a new one. And this is something that monitors will pick up as they come to your site for monitoring visits. You're going to be working on trials that are going to last 2, 3, 4 years, and even longer in some cases. So some of these documents are going to expire during the trial. Lab certifications, your local lab, your central lab, I'll discuss those in a little more detail later. They're going to have lab certification documents known as CLIA and also known as CAP. Those are the two most common, and they will have expiration dates on them. You can find those yourself You can generally go, if it's a central lab, you can go find that lab. If it's LabCorp, for instance, you can go find that lab on there. You can go find it on their website. You can go to their website, search on CLIA, you can pull up the document, and you can see what the expiration date is. But that's something that's going to expire during the trial. Monitors are going to need a new copy of that, so just be prepared for it. IRB approvals. You're going to get an initial IRB approval that's going to be good for 1 year. When you get when you get to the point where your 1 year is almost up, you're going to submit a new submission for what's called continuing review. So you need to do that probably a month or so prior to the expiration date and get that in so that they can approve that. And once again, that's going to be, you're going to get an approval letter from the IRB that says we approved it on this date and you're good to go until whatever the expiration date is. So, and that's something monitors are going to want to pick up when they come out to your site. So you got to be prepared for that. Excuse me. So finally, you're going to have documents that are collected after the completion or termination of the trial. These are listed in section 8.4. Once again, these may or may not include wedding signature documents. And it's going to include documents such as investigational product accountability forms, IP return or destruction documentation. Although most of those are going to be collected during the trial, you may have some that are collected at the closeout visit. You're going to have an IRB closeout report. That's going to be something that you will have to submit to your IRB for closeout, and whatever their requirements are, you'll provide that for them. And then once you've had your closeout visit from the monitor, probably another week or two later, you'll get your closeout letter from your IRB, indicating that everything is now closed for that trial at your site. Related to some of these documents that you're going to see on here, there are a few of them I want to point out. The subject identification code list, which we're going to go over a little bit later. That'll be a document that you maintain the names and contact information of all of your subjects. That information always remains at your site. You do not give that to anybody. You do not send that to anybody. When monitors show up and they want to look at it, you allow them to look at it. All they want to confirm is that you have collected all of the contact information for all of your subjects. For most of the trials, you're only going to have about a half a dozen or 8 or 9, 10 subjects mainly. So it's going to be pretty easy to keep track of that. But don't ever give that to somebody. If a monitor says they need to collect it, tell them that they're mistaken. They never collect that. That is for you. That's for your files only. And it indicates that in the ICH section 8.4. The other thing that I'll mention is related to audit certificates and the final trial closeout monitoring report. Audit reports and those are only stored by the sponsor. You'll get a follow-up letter that says, we did an audit at your site, here are the findings, but you're not going to get a report of everything that was reviewed by the auditor. So you'll want to file that letter when you get it. If you have any audits, you may not have any, but from time to time you might. You're going to have monitors who are going to come and visit your site on a regular basis. They are from either the sponsor or the CRO who's working on behalf of the sponsor. So a couple things that they're going to do related to your Investigator Site File. They're going to reconcile documents in your file versus what they have in their own file. So they're going to perform this activity during their interim monitoring visits, and they're basically just going to compare your ISF to what's been collected in their trial master file. So probably when you have your very first IMV, they'll spend a lot of time on that, but then as they come back for subsequent monitoring visits, they'll spend a little less time on it because they've already reviewed a lot of the stuff and it isn't going to change very much. They should be doing some kind of review of your ISF at each monitoring visit, which means they're going to be asking for documents. They're going to be asking you, hey, where can I find this particular document? So you'll need to be prepared for that. Good practice includes segmenting their reviews by reviewing certain sections of the ISF. For instance, they might review all the training documents, and then next time they might want to go review that you filed all of the monitoring letters for all of the monitoring visits that you get, because those will need to be filed in your ISF as well. And then one of the things they'll do is, because their trial master files are almost always electronic, they can they can produce TMF reports that show either missing or expired documents. So they normally would run that prior to their visit, and then they know, hey, I've got this medical license that's expired and I need to collect the current one for that. So they'll probably have a list of a few, but there probably should not be very many. They might have 8, 9, 10 documents to collect, and normally that would be a fairly normal visit. Now, if you work on a trial where you don't have a lot of, the monitoring frequency is very, not very frequent. In other words, they're coming out there every 6 months, then there's going to be more and more of that. So that's something you need to be aware of as a coordinator, to kind of help them out, make it a little easier for them, because they're going to be asking for it. So you need to be ready for it. So section 4.9.0 of ICHE 6 states that investigators should maintain adequate and accurate source documents. So we have a little acronym for that called ALCOA. ALCOA stands for attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, and accurate. And then we also have some other principles as well. It needs to be complete, consistent, enduring, and available. So all of those attributes should apply to each document that you have. If there's changes to source data, it should be traceable. You should not obscure any original entry. For example, if an investigator signed his or her name and then put an error, put an incorrect date, you can just line through the date and they can put the correct date on there, but you would not want to obscure that so that you don't know what they put on it. So be familiar with that. Look through the section or the ICHE 6 document for more information on that, but that's something that's very important. You'll need to be able to maintain those attributes as you move forward. So as I said earlier, the investigator, the institution should maintain all trial documents as specified in Section 8 that we've been going over, also as required by any other regulatory authority. And then you should take measures to prevent accidental or premature destruction or loss of your documents. So they should be in a secure environment, preferably in a locked filing cabinet when they're not in use. So that's best practice. So essential documents are required to be retained until at least 2 years after the last approval of marketing applications, either FDA or whatever regulatory authority the drug has been submitted to, or at least 2 years have elapsed since the discontinuation of all trials for that particular product. In most cases, you will never discard these. These documents will basically hang around forever until the sponsor gives you permission to discard them, to destroy them. So you're going to maintain these. Some sites will transfer documents to an off-site storage facility just because they don't have enough storage available on their local site. If you do that, make sure you create a note to file and indicate that after a certain amount of time, a date, 2 years after closeout, whatever it is, we're going to transfer these binders to our long-term storage facility and indicate the name of that facility, where it's located, and who the contact person is for that facility, so that in the event that 5, 10 years from now, someone comes up and says, we've got to have access to this, you're no longer there, the PI has retired, they're no longer there, no one knows where these are, but you've got a document indicating where they're stored. And that's something that your monitor is going to collect when they come for their closeout visit, so that they have a copy of that in case something happens to the one that you have. So be aware of these storage requirements and the durations of those. Okay, and finally, section 4.9.7 states that upon request of the monitor, auditor, IRB, or regulatory authority, the investigator or institution should make available for direct access all requested trial-related records. So that means you can't say, well, I got that file over here and you can't have it. If they ask for it, you've got to produce that. And these files need to be audit ready at all times, because you never know when a SNAP audit may occur. You may not know when the FDA wants to perform an inspection. So you need to have everything up to date as best you can at all times. That's the best way to be prepared in case you are audited. So here are your reading assignments for this week. You've got a couple of chapters there in the textbook, and then I've also listed a couple of other documents on there. We've already mentioned section 8, so you're familiar with that. But go and look through those. I'd like you to read through those and be familiar with them. They will amplify the information that I've gone over in this lecture, and should they prompt any questions, just let me know and I can definitely answer them for you. So finally, for your online assignment this week, I'm giving you some essential documents for your Investigator Site File for the study that we're working on. So you'll see those on Blackboard. I'd like for you to take the ISF contents and checklist document that I posted on there and verify that each file is present in the ISF. Now, there are probably going to be some that are not present. That's okay. Some of the documents won't be available until you're a little further into the trial. But this will get you started in looking and reviewing those documents for regulatory compliance. Make sure all the dates are within range that I've discussed here. See if anything is missing, and then just do a little assessment You can use that checklist and then post your assessment on the discussion forum this week. I'll take a look at it and review it and give you some feedback on it. So good luck on the assignment, and let me know if you have questions.